Raise your hand if this sounds familiar. Your child is peacefully watching TV. You think, perfect, now I'll ask them to come for dinner. The moment you say, TV band karo, it's like you have declared World War III. So let me tell you my own story. I was stuck in traffic, running late from an event. Usually I am home before dinner because honestly my kids need me at dinner time. And they eat better when I am home. I called my husband and asked, how are the kids? And he said, oh, they are watching TV. Now we don't typically do weekday screens, but I wasn't upset because that is the trade-off of me going out sometimes. And I have accepted it. I just knew one thing, getting them to jump from TV straight to dinner, that will be a task full of tears and name calling. So I said something to my husband over the phone that saved our entire evening. But wait, have you ever wondered why this happens? Why can't they just stop? Is it really about being stubborn, or is it something deeper going on? Today, I'm sharing the brain science behind this struggle and 5 practical strategies that work. No bribe, no battles, no guilt. Hi, I am Rahila Tayyabi, a trauma-informed parenting coach, a mom of 2 beautifully strong-willed boys, and your parenting guide that's peaceful but not perfect. If you're tired of feeling like the screen police, daily battles over transitions, wondering if you're raising addicted kids, then you are in the right place. I don't believe in quick fixes or one-size-fits-all solutions. Instead, I help you understand the why behind your child's behavior so you can respond with confidence and not confusion. If that sounds like the parenting support you have been looking for, hit subscribe and let's dive into the science. Picture the scene. It's a regular Tuesday evening. 8-year-old Maya is watching her favorite cartoon, completely absorbed. Her brain is firing with dopamine, her attention laser focused on the screen. Then her mom calls out, Maya, dinner time. In Maya's mind, it's like someone just pulled the emergency brake on a speeding train. Her prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for switching tasks, starts sending weak signals. Okay, time to stop. But those signals are drowned out by the louder, more primitive parts of her brain screaming, no, this is good, don't stop. Here's what's really happening. Maya's brain is literally under construction. The prefrontal cortex, what neuroscientists call the CEO of the brain, won't fully mature until she is in her mid-20s. This neural control center governs what we call executive functioning skills. Let me break these down for you today. First is cognitive flexibility. Think of it like switching between different games. 1 minute you are playing cricket, next minute someone says, come on, let's play hide and seek. Your brain needs to completely change its rule book. For kids, this is trying to change the channel on an old TV. It takes time and effort. Then there is inhibitory control. This is your brain's stop button. Like when you see a delicious chocolate cake and your brain says, eat it now, but you need to wait until after dinner. For children, this button doesn't exist yet. Next is working memory. Imagine your brain as a juggler. Working memory is trying to keep 3 balls in the air while someone is telling you the rules of a new game. Kids' brain can barely manage 1 ball, let alone remember the rules while doing something else. Fourth is attention control. Picture trying to have a conversation at a loud birthday party. Your adult brain can focus on one person talking, but a child's brain is hearing the music, seeing the balloons, noticing the cake, and trying to listen, all at the same intensity. And finally, planning and organization. This is like packing for picnic. Adults think weather, food, games, what time we need to leave. Kids live in the now. Tomorrow might as well be next year, and getting ready means putting shoes on. Maybe. But here is what you need to remember. These skills develop hierarchically. Basic inhibitory control emerges around the age of 3-4, but cognitive flexibility and complex planning don't stabilize until adolescence and beyond. So when you ask your child to stop watching TV, you are essentially asking someone with a learner's permit to perform a Formula 1 racing maneuver. Their neural pathways for task switching are still being built, melanin sheets are still forming, and synaptic connections are still strengthening. This isn't isn't defiance. This is neurodevelopment in real time. When an adult switches from TV to dinner, multiple brain regions coordinate seamlessly, and we know in all honesty how tough it is for us also. When a child attempts the same transition, it's like trying to conduct an orchestra where half the instruments are still being tuned. TV isn't just any activity, it's a dopamine jackpot. Bright colors, fast movement, catchy music, sound effects, predictable storylines with instant rewards, engaging characters and emotions. Your child's brain is constantly getting micro rewards. They are in what scientists call flow state, completely absorbed. Now you are asking them to transition from sitting still for dinner, or standing in a bathtub, or listening to your boring instructions while they do homework. It's like going from a roller coaster to watching paint dry. The stimulation crash is real, and that's what triggers the meltdowns. The solution is not to avoid screens, it's to understand how to work with their developing brain, not against it. Now let's get back to my story. Here's what I told my husband. Let them know this is the last episode, after that bath time and then dinner. Sounds simple, right? But here's the magic that happened. Instead of TV to dinner, which would be a massive stimulation drop, we did TV, bath time and dinner. That was a gradual step down. This gave their brains time to anticipate the change. It made a bridge between the activities, and I was not the bad cop who switched off TV. When I walked in 30 minutes later, no drama, no begging, no screen battles, just two kids fresh from the bath, ready for family dinner. The buffer transition strategy works because it respects brain development and it doesn't fight it. Ready to try this at home? Let me walk you through my top 5 tools, and I'm going to share exactly how I use them with my own kids. So the first thing I do is what I would call the preview method. Instead of just suddenly saying TV off, dinner now, I give them a whole roadmap. I will say something like, "Beta, after Daniel Tiger ends, we will play with blocks of 5 minutes and then it's dinner time." What it does is it takes away that shock. Their brain knows what's coming, so they are not blindsided by the transition. The second thing that's been total game changer for us is using visual and auditory cues. But I do it in a way that teaches them responsibility. So instead of me being the timer police, I ask them to set a timer on Alexa. I'll say, "Can you ask Alexa to set a 15-minute timer for us?" This way, they are part of the process and not victims of it. And here's something really practical. I teach them that an episode actually ends when credits roll over. That text appears on screen. You know how Netflix immediately starts the next episode? We pause it right when we see those credits. I tell them, "See that? That means the story is complete. The makers of the show are telling us it's time to take a break." It's amazing how much less the resistance is when they understand that there is actually a natural ending point. Now here's something that took me a while to figure out. You can't go from high stimulation straight to low stimulation. So I started inserting what I call neutral activities. Instead of TV straight to dinner, we do TV, then maybe some coloring, quiet play, or jumping around, and then dinner. Or TV, then some music and dancing, and then getting dressed. It's like giving their brain a chance to slowly come down from that high. The fourth thing, and this is so important, avoid sudden shutdowns. I used to just switch off the TV without warning, and let me tell you, it felt like betrayal to my kids' brains. Same happens with you when you are on the last episode about to find out who the killer was and your husband switches off the TV. I am sure you feel the killing is justified now. Let us also give our kids the same chance. Now I always give notice, even if it's just 2 more minutes and we are turning this off. It makes such a difference. Their brain needs time to prepare for the change. And the last thing I do is narrate the sequence out loud. I'll say something like, "Pehle ye episode khatam hoga, where we'll have bath time and then dinner time." I am literally giving their executive brain a roadmap. When kids know what's coming next and next after that, they resist so much less because predictability reduces anxiety. Here's what I want you to remember. When we scaffold transitions, we are not creating weakness. We are building strength. We are helping them develop emotional regulation, flexibility, patience, focus. Think of it like learning to ride a bike. You don't throw them on and expect to balance. You use training wheels, hold the seat, run alongside them. We are training wheels for their executive function. Over time, these external supports become internal skills. they will naturally know how to transition, not because you forced them, but because you taught them. If this shifted something for you, even a just tiny aha moment, I would love to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, what's your child's hardest transition right now? TV time, leaving the playground, getting ready in the morning. Let's problem solve this together. Want more peaceful parenting tools? Subscribe for weekly videos. Share this with a parent who needs to hear it. Remember, your child's brain is growing. Your parenting skills are also growing. You are not just managing behavior, you are building a human, and that's the most important work in the world.